This is kind of Black Label Society stuff. Wannabe-ish.
Yeah, kind of. Well, guys,
Keep it going.
we you like my mumble rap, my fake rap?
Yeah.
Welcome back, guys, to another episode of What Car or Truck Should I Buy?
Happy Monday, guys.
Happy Monday. Today we are going to be talking first, Nathan, a lot about autonomous cars. And we'll get into that discussion in a second. But at the end of the show, of course, we're going to answer some of your guys' questions about what cars or trucks you should be buying. So we have some pre-prepared questions. If you guys want to drop us some of your own questions in the comments or in the chat room, we'll be happy to read some of those off as well. But I think we should just go ahead and get started with our little discussion today, Nathan.
Yep.
So Autolist.com published a survey asking people which company they trusted the most to bring a self-driving car to market. And we have to be specific about what we mean here. Like, this is not the first company to say, oh, look, we have this car and it drives itself. This is the first company that can actually sell you a vehicle that will, to any old regular consumer, you or me or you guys back at home, that can actually drive you from your house to, like, the grocery store and to the airport or whatever it is.
Yeah, this is a company that they feel can bring it to market, okay? So this is something that they're saying, yeah, it'll be mass-produced and we'll be able to all buy it.
Right.
So the first, and let's get right to the first one, which isn't much of a surprise, which is Tesla.
Yeah, so the Tesla, according to this survey by Autolist.com, it's the most trusted company. 24% of the people they surveyed said they trusted Tesla to bring a self-driving car to market well before any other manufacturer that is also trying to do the same thing, which is convenient, actually, because Tesla last week just announced a new little chip in this game that a full self-driving computer they developed is actually being put into every new car they make, right? That's kind of what the Elon Musk did. They had like
plan moving forward.
Yeah, it was an investor meeting that he gathered a bunch of people and he said, look, we have this new chip and there's not one but two self-driving computers on the little chip right here. These are both the self-driving computers. And so supposedly all the hardware necessary to do fully autonomous driving is already in every Tesla vehicle that's being produced right now.
Now, at the end of this section, I have a few comments, I'm sure Mikey does as well, about what we think about autonomous driving and how far off we truly think it is, okay?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't necessarily line up with what we're reading here.
Right.
All right, let's move on, though.
Yeah, so GM and Cruise Automation is kind of the next, or it's one of the next companies we're talking about. This is actually the third most trusted company by this survey. GM basically bought up, was it a majority share in this company, Cruise Automation?
It's a wholly owned subsidiary, so GM owns Cruise.
So GM bought this company out that they're making, I think it's a Chevy Bolt with a bunch of computers and cameras and radars and stuff like that on top of it. And according to Autolist, is the third most trusted company. 15% of people they surveyed said they trusted GM, which is actually up from 9% last
Trusted
year.
GM with bringing this out to market.
To market, yes, to market. They currently have some form of like Super Cruise, right? Cadillac has Super Cruise, which is a hands-off but eyes-on system. So you can be sitting in the driver's seat of your Cadillac with Super Cruise, and they have cameras inside the dashboard, inside the car, to make sure your eyes are on the road, make sure you're paying attention, but you don't actually have to do anything. The car will drive itself as long as you keep paying attention to the road.
It's actually monitoring your eyes. It's looking at your face and making sure that you are indeed paying attention, which brings to question whether or not if you have a rubber mask and you put it in front of you and then you move away, can you fool the system? And I'm sure people are already working on that right now.
So the next company, there's another one, is Waymo, which is actually owned by Google. They are the least trusted company, according to this survey. Only 2% of people actually trust them to
because
bring...
nobody's heard of them.
Right, no one's heard of them. To bring an autonomous vehicle to market. So this is a Google subsidiary. They started in 2009 as the Google Self-Driving Car Project. And Google launched a limited self-driving car service in Phoenix called Waymo One. So this service is, you have to like sign up to be a part of it. You have to be a trusted rider or something like that. And there's been some incidents between Waymo cars and other cars, which might be why they're not trusted so much.
Well, and the part of it has to do with people doing really stupid crap, like jumping out in front of the vehicle or setting up traps for them, throwing baseball bats at them. In one case, I believe somebody tried to throw a car battery at one, which would have been fun to watch, somebody trying to hurl a car battery at something. people are screwing with them, and that's inevitable, especially in the interim when it comes to these vehicles.
Yeah.
It's really obvious that they are autonomous. A, no driver. B, large components hanging off the roof of it, and then C, on the side of it saying, hey, this is an autonomous vehicle.
They're really advertised.
And the routes are pre-planned, so they know where they're going.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's happening. So I feel bad for the Waymo guys because they're trying to do this thing. Now, they do have a partnership, a limited partnership with FCA. The vehicles they are using, I believe, all of them are the minivans, the Pacifica plug-in hybrid minivans.
Yeah.
So they're one of the few companies that are not looking specifically at electric vehicles, but they're also looking at plug-in
I
hybrids.
think on Google's campus in California, they have these weird little like two-seater pod-looking things. But the program in Phoenix itself are Pacificas. Okay, so another company looking to bring autonomy to the market is Uber, right? The ride-sharing company Uber. This is according to Autolist.com, the fourth most trusted company. So about 8% of people surveyed said they trusted Uber to bring this technology to market. But unfortunately for Uber, there was a fatal crash in Phoenix in March of 2018, which I think it was a Volvo XC90, right?
Yeah, Volvo autonomous testing cars are XC90s.
Someone behind the wheel of this vehicle accidentally hit and killed a pedestrian. The technology was what was driving it, but there's always a safety driver there. And so they had to take a break for a minute while they kind of figured out some stuff. And then they started testing again in 2018. But the accident was a pretty major setback for Uber in terms of bringing their technology to market, because obviously that sort of publicity is not very good for your technology. And then next, also Uber's competitor, Lyft, which is another ride-sharing company, they are also working on some autonomous vehicle technology, but they are the second least trusted company in the survey. So about 4% of people surveyed said they trusted Lyft to bring an autonomous vehicle to market. They have 300-ish engineers and technicians working on this project, according to The Verge, and they're using Ford Fusion hybrids as their test cars. So we have a bunch of people trying to bring this technology to market. The last one we want to talk about is actually two different companies, but it's Toyota and Volkswagen. So the reason these are important is because they're kind of like the legacy manufacturers, according to Autolist survey, right? Toyota's working on bringing an autonomous car out by 2020 using rolling supercomputers, but they're still developing a lot of hardware. And then Volkswagen is working on the ID line of vehicles, which is all electrified or electric cars. Think like the ID Buzz or the ID Cross. There's all these different ones. But Volkswagen is working on this sort of technology too. So the question, Nathan, is who do we think is actually going to bring this technology to market first? Who do you think?
Can we go back to Uber for a second?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
There were a couple questions or comments about people wondering if Uber was actually testing their cars. They did start late last year.
Yeah.
They're just a lot quieter about it now.
Yeah,
They don't need the fanfare right now. What they need to do is they need to get their research up and moving, because they've lost some time trying to stop the pain of litigation and whatnot, because frankly speaking, until these guys get it together, there will be fatalities, there will be accidents. I just said that. Sorry, it's Monday. There will be accidents. There will be these issues, and that's going to keep happening. And that's just part of the reality of it. You're testing in real time with real civilians on the ground. These things are going to happen. But there's a big difference. You were just asking, and I'm sure, Mr. Producer, you would agree. Who's going to be first? Well, I don't think any of them are going to be first in the way that you guys are thinking. Cities, grid setups, even towns that are fairly well laid out, sure, we could see some of that in dry climates. Right now, outside, we're in Boulder, Colorado. It is snowing, and it's snowing a lot, actually.
It's April
I know, it's
29th,
freaking end of
it's
April.
dumping snow outside.
Colorado, what are you going to do? But the thing is that a lot of these systems do not work properly or have a hard time working properly in poor climates. And there are some major issues about that. Look, there are only so many cities out there that don't have heavy rainstorms or snow or dust storms. And these things can affect those cars right now.
And it's probably a good reason why companies like Uber and like Waymo are using a city like Phoenix, Arizona to do their testing, right? I mean, it's always sunny there. It's always hot. They don't really have to worry about snow in April.
For the most part. Now, I'm not saying that they won't make it work. I just think that it's going to take longer than many people anticipate. The whole idea of autonomy taking over is something that is way off. And besides, I don't think anybody who owns a pickup truck is going to allow that vehicle to be autonomous. I'm sorry, but I just don't think a good old boy is going to say, oh, yeah, go ahead and drive me wherever you want. That's not going to happen. I think, well, maybe if they're drinking a lot and they say, yeah, take me home, that's one thing. But no, in all seriousness, it's very difficult to make an autonomous vehicle. There's a lot that goes into it. So these cars that are riding around California and Phoenix and Florida and really good climates and really clear environments, yeah, sure, okay, you could do it. But try coming out here. Go to Alaska, see what happens. That's the limiting factor right now. You know, there's a program, DARPA, right?
Yep.
that program is working with the United States military and others in order to have vehicles running autonomously in all climates, in all environments. Now, that technology does trickle down, and eventually it will find its way to these vehicles. And when that happens, then you're going to have closer to true autonomy. You'll have the ability to say anywhere in the country, hey, take me home, or hey, take me here. But until then, right now, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah, there's different levels of autonomy, right? So it's something that manufacturers don't necessarily publish all the time because it might be kind of hard to understand or might be a little, it's a weird scale, right? But there's 5 levels of autonomy. Level 1 is, I think it's like basically adaptive cruise control, right? Where the car has some form of control over the speed.
Yeah, we're talking about level 5 where it's hands off, eyes off, not even like steering wheel
you
pedal,
could be
you
asleep.
tell it where to go.
Yeah.
And
I think what you're getting at, so the difference between level 4 and level 5 is with level 4 there are still instances in which you would need to drive the car yourself, and one of those instances would be foul weather conditions, right? So as far as who's going to bring out the first market available level 5 autonomous vehicle, you think it's Tesla?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's probably a good guess. The other ones that seem really far along the way to me are Waymo, and also General Motors is making decent progress. Mary Barra came out sometime last year and said that GM is going to have a self-driving car, not market ready, but they're going to have a car driving itself sometime this year. So the 3 frontrunners to me are Waymo, GM, and Tesla. And of course GM has Super Cruise, which is probably one of the most advanced systems besides Tesla out there right now.
It's an excellent system. I actually sampled it slightly. And from what I can tell, what you will be seeing in the near future are a lot of vehicles that will be able to drive themselves in certain environments, as I said, but also there are other factors that could help these vehicles drive in crappy weather like this, which is certain types of construction around the vehicle. For instance, embedding sensors into the asphalt or onto signs or onto hard points where the car can actually see that even if it's blind and its radar and sonar and satellite are not responding properly. These are things to keep in mind as well. Those are technologies that are being worked on in conjunction with these other ones. So yet another thing to think about.
And we want to hear your guys' opinion on this too. So you already have some people commenting down below, but
yeah, somebody asked about Porsche. That they were mentioned. Porsche's probably working on it. Well, Porsche and Volkswagen, they work together on a lot of things.
Porsche is owned by Volkswagen.
Yeah, so
if Volkswagen comes out with the technology, you can bet that Porsche is going to have access to that technology.
Yep.
And Audi.
And
Lamborghini and
Bugatti.
Skoda. And Seat, and everyone under the.
Can you imagine Bugatti being autonomous? I couldn't.
Yeah, let's talk about. So while we're on the subject of autonomous cars, what do you guys think about it as far as performance goes? I mean, do you think performance cars are going to stay around for a while?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Or will we all just?
Well, I can go back to actually I can link that back to pickup trucks.
Sure.
Let me explain. Biggest selling vehicle in the United States, pickup trucks, by far, by a huge margin, million from Ford last year, roughly. Yeah. Okay. So how many pickup truck owners out there do you think want their trucks to completely take over and be autonomous?
Not many.
Not that many. There's something about independence and pickup trucks that go together like peanut butter and jelly. It's just that simple. So if you have sports car lovers out there, and there are quite a few, they're sort of the same way. Why would you buy a fast car that you can't drive? I mean, the whole point is, yeah, you jump into a vehicle and it takes you from one point to another. You might as well get into a hyperloop or whatever the hell they're going to shove under the ground, or
Right.
a train or something.
Sure.
So the idea of better performance, nah, not really anything there. But better congestion management, better fuel economy, yes. Definitely, that's something that autonomy can really help with. Look, if you have a whole bunch of cars on the highway and they're all talking to each other and everything else, which is the future, supposedly, they'll be able to drive 5 feet apart, 80 miles per hour down the highway, and with total immunity from,
It'll reduce traffic.
Exactly.
And reduces pollution.
All these things could possibly happen in the future. That's what they're hoping. Okay, that's the ideal point of view. Okay, granted though, even in the future, there's going to be some idiot out there like me in an old beat up pickup truck who goes out into the lanes, and these guys are trying to follow each other 4 feet apart, and all of a sudden the computer's freaking out because some guy's driving like half the speed of everybody else or twice the speed. Yeah, I mean, these things can happen. There's always a glitch in the system. Yeah. Autonomy will never be completely perfected, but it'll get closer and closer as time goes on.
So in terms of time frame, like when do you think
10 years.
10 years?
10 years from now.
When the first
saying,
market ready autonomous vehicle?
I'd say by 2028, 2029
sure.
Is when we're going to be able to literally get into a car that, first of all, people saying, you're going to buy a car without a steering wheel? No, there'll be something to actually stop it. Okay, there's got to be. But for the most part, yeah, you'll be able to get into a vehicle that won't need a driver, really. There are a lot of people out there, millennials, jerks, who get out there and like, I don't want to drive, bro. All I want to do is just be on my phone and play hacky sack and just, have somebody else drive.
There's so many kids in my high school class that just didn't get. I grew up in Seattle, right, where there's good public transportation. And so you don't need a driver's license, but I was one of those kids. Like my 16th birthday, I was at the DMV,
right,
getting my driver's license.
But how many of your cohorts didn't?
A lot.
Exactly, they're in their basement right now.
And that number is going up too. It's been going up for a while, and it's probably going to continue going up.
That is where, unfortunately, that's one of the reasons why autonomous vehicles are such a great idea. Because these bozos don't want to drive, so they want to get into the car and like, bro, take me wherever.
Right.
I want tacos. Let's go get tacos, and the car takes them to tacos. That's pretty much what we're talking about.
I saw a really funny, I think it was like a Reddit post or something like that, that someone just made the comment that car guys or car people are like horse girls, right? Like people that like horses. And I think cars, especially performance cars, are going to become the next horses. So how there's like a bunch of people who just own horse, like no one, practically speaking, rides a horse to work anymore. Right, but for a long time, horses
Mr. Truck does, but
horses were the most practical form of transportation. For
back in Roman's day.
Yeah, exactly. When Roman was a kid, he would ride a horse to work every day, and because he worked as a child also. But now no one rides horses unless they are really passionate about riding horses. But I think cars are going to do the same thing. No one's going to actually need to drive themselves in a car to work. There's just going to be these like clubs, like the Nürburgring or something like that. It's just going to be a place where people who are enthusiastic about cars go just to drive cars somewhere, even though you don't really need to drive anywhere else. I think that's the 50 years from now. That's how cars are going to exist.
You read a lot of Ayn Rand. So the bottom line is he's wrong. People are going to love driving forever because there's a passion in driving. There's a joy in driving.
Yeah.
Going off road is something you cannot replicate in something else that's being driven by someone else.
Sure.
And there are 1 million people in the United States who just made it through Easter Jeep Safari and 5 other different safari events that have happened around the country in the past 2 months. As such, he's wrong. But then again, he's from Seattle. Sorry, guys. And then on top of that, you do have a lot of people who love sports cars. And I think there'll be a new generation of people who get into sports cars for a different reason. There'll be a lot of little electric sport cars are going to come around the corner. And part of the reason why they're going to be fast and they're going to be relatively safe and they're going to be really easy to maintain with 14 moving parts. And those vehicles will make it really easy for these millennials who really don't know much about cars and gas and everything else to suddenly jump into something, hit a button, and it's like a video game.
Like
and they
rocket ship,
bound around a track. So that's sort of my version of the future. I don't think driving's going to be resorted to a bunch of horse riding freaks.
I'm talking
in the future.
Like way down the road, not in the next 10 years. I'm talking like 50, 60, 70 years out.
All right, we'll see what happens.
And even if it does become this like horrible dystopia in 60, 70 years, we'll be dead.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
be gone
Of course,
anyways.
do it.
So this is not our problem.
It's not our
This is
problem.
not our problem.
But kids out there, look out.
Look out, kids. Okay, should we move on and answer
Absolutely,
some
let's
questions?
answer some questions.
Okay.
This first one's really good.
It's
Let's
a
go
really
for
good
it.
question, actually, because we just had one of these. So the first question comes from Steve, who's wondering if he should buy a Jeep Gladiator. He says he owns an F-150. He bought it in 2016, but really wanted a convertible. We also bought a camper trailer, fully loaded. That trailer weighs close to 4,500 pounds. The Gladiator definitely scratches the convertible itch and can expose him to some off-roading, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But will it comfortably handle towing, assuming there are hills and mountains in its future? One of your reports said it was working with the boat connected. It was working with the boat connected to it on a short haul. He's wondering, like, 8-hour drive, 4,500 pounds. How is this thing going to tow over the long run?
All right, Steve, first of all, you'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
But there are a couple of things. First of all, we did we have an amazing gauntlet coming out where we go maximum weight on the Gladiator up the big hill. Can't tell you
7,000 pounds, yeah.
Yep. Can't tell you the results of that or anything else about that.
We don't
We
wanna
also did
spoil
an MPG loop with a trailer that weighed around 4,300 pounds,
Yep.
and that was a 100-mile loop. And we can tell you a couple things about that. First of all, I'm not going to tell you what the MPG was because that's the whole point of watching the video.
Not gonna spoil it.
And that's going to be on TFL Truck in the very near future. But what I can say is the vehicle can tow fairly well. Remember, it's a very long wheelbase. It's actually longer than a lot of the other vehicles it competes against. And it's heavy. It's got weight to it. That V6, you could push it pretty hard if you're really, really, towing heavy weights. But in terms of 4,500 pounds, should be okay. Here's the interesting thing. Keep in mind, they built it to be an off-roader, so like its mirrors, they suck.
Oh,
They're terrible
bad
for
for
towing.
towing.
You need to buy some really good add-ons to it, and don't get the suction cup things that go in the middle and obscure the view like the ones that Andre loves. He's crazy. Get better ones that clamp onto it or tie around it or something like that. But you really do need extensions for the mirrors. Also consider the fact that it currently doesn't come with a brake controller. Now, according to Jeep, it will have a brake controller coming out later on in its current life cycle. But we don't know exactly when that is. I think it's early 2020. I'm sure Andre can pop in here in a minute and tell me for sure if he's actually watching this, but he's probably not. Eurovision's on right now, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, they will have it coming out soon. But until then, you either have to buy one, a brake controller, or
Aftermarket.
well, that's what I mean, aftermarket, or have a surge brake on your trailer. Now, with that all being said, keep in mind that it's kind of a narrow vehicle as well. So if you have a really wide trailer, you might want to make sure that you have enough truck in front of you, so to speak. So if it's not enough, then you might want to stick with a full-size truck. That's just kind of the bottom line. I don't know what your trailer looks like, what its configuration is. So keep that in mind as well. So there you go. It's not a bad truck for towing. It's a compromise because it is built for off-roading. So think about that as well.
Scott Robinson is saying, look at that rear squat about this picture right here. When we had it loaded up with about 4,300 pounds, we were towing just this horse trailer from Cimarron. That was squatting about an inch with a 4,300 pound trailer. I don't know how much it squatted when it was fully loaded.
Can't say. That's going to be on the video. But I can tell you this, in terms of how much it's squatted, the whole reason why Jeep has it, the whole bitch and heat thing with the tail up so high to begin with, is specifically for that.
Yeah.
So it drops down a little bit when you put the trailer on there. You're absolutely right. It does squat, but it's not as much as you might think. I was actually surprised. So was
Wasn't too
Andre.
bad,
Yeah. One thing I can't stand is when there's so much squat that the headlights are shooting upward and blinding
that
everybody.
sucks. Yeah.
Not only that, but you can actually get pulled over for that in some states.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that it wasn't too terribly bad. And worst case scenario, if you're buying a truck and you're serious about towing with it and you don't like the amount that it squats, they do have airbag suspension setups that you can buy that will help quite a bit.
Also, so I was filming you guys when you did the MPG loop towing with the Gladiator.
Yep.
And one thing I noticed is that it had no problems getting up to speed on the highway, towing about 4,300 pounds. Granted, this was all flat and level ground.
But over a mile above sea level.
I think with a 4,500-ish pound camper trailer, you should be fine, especially if you're down at sea level. And if you want a convertible truck, there's nothing out other than the Gladiator right now that'll actually get you that.
Yeah, you want to take a Sawzall to a Tacoma, I suppose you could.
You could do that, or you could go buy like an OJ Bronco. Maybe that would tow about 5,000.
Hell yeah, it would.
But otherwise, yeah, I think it's if you want something that tows and you want something with a convertible top, that's it.
And it's a pretty serious off-roader. Now remember, you can also get some pretty good tow packages on it to actually increase its towing capability.
Yeah.
You look into that when you go online onto the Jeep.com, and you'll be able to see that with some of the options, which is important.
It's the Sport S, and you have to get the trailer package, the trailer tow package, which basically just gives you the Rubicon axles.
You can do it on the normal Sport too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can do it on the normal Sport, but do not get the manual. As much as I love the manual, that drops your towing rating down to around 4,000 pounds, and that's not what you want.
Every single manual Gladiator, right? So if you want to tow, you have to get tow more than 4,000 pounds. Okay, let's move on to the next question, which comes from Terry.
Hey, Terry.
So Terry is asking about the difference, whether he should buy a 4Runner TRD or a Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk. So Terry says he's looking at buying a new vehicle in 2019, looking at the Toyota 4Runner TRD Off-Road or Pro, or the Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk. Budget's about $50,000, so either one I get will be well-equipped. It needs to be a capable off-roader. Looking at the vehicle, he's going to keep it until the wheels fall off. So he wants it to be reliable, presumably. It doesn't need a ton of room, but he's a big guy, so he wants to be comfortable. And he wants to do some light to medium off-roading, but nothing serious. Which would you suggest? He says he's leaning towards the Cherokee, but would like our input. And I think, Terry, we'd both tell you to steer the other way.
Oh yeah, go to the 4Runner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's look, we debated this actually, because we
did.
do actually read these a little bit before we come on.
Yeah, we prepare.
And both of us agreed that the Cherokee is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's the Trailhawk. It's great off-road.
Really good.
Has a great ride. Drives like a car on the road. So in those ways, it's superior to the Toyota. However, the one thing you wrote in there is that you wanted to drive it until the wheels fell off. You basically indicated that you wanted something reliable.
And
Reliability, stick to the Toyota.
that is Toyota's wheelhouse.
That damn 4Runner has been around for so freaking long that they've really ironed out an awful lot of the bugs that are in there. It has a solid rear axle, which is great for off-roading. It's tough as nails. It's reliable. It's somewhat simple. Yes, it's kind of primitive, especially when you compare it to something as modern as the Jeep. And I think that the Jeep interior is so much nicer.
Yeah.
But in terms of reliability, if you want something that's going to last, just go to the Toyota.
Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the Cherokee, I think, is a little more comfortable than the 4Runner.
It is.
But out of all of Toyota's off-road worthy trucks, the 4Runner, or maybe the Tundra, is probably the most comfortable. Like the
much
Tacoma,
comfortable.
you and I both have a hard time getting comfortable in the Tacoma.
Oh God, the cab in there is just the way it's
short,
squat.
and the seat is really, it's like
The seat's
you're
too
somehow
high and the roof's too low.
That's the bottom line.
and your legs like stick straight out for some reason. But the 4Runner is not that bad.
Yeah, it has a different cab configuration.
Yeah, I would go with the 4Runner. Plus, you say you want something that's a capable off-roader. Frankly speaking, between those two, the 4Runner is across the board going to be a more off-road capable vehicle.
You don't even need the TRD Pro. You can get the off-road and get just about all the goodness you get out of the TRD Pro without spending quite as much money. And by the way, good luck finding a TRD Pro, an actual one.
Those sell like hotcakes. But I think we would tell you to stick towards the Toyota.
Yeah. Boss?
So my thing is, a couple people are mentioning that the Grand Cherokee is more a direct competitor to the 4Runner.
Yeah.
My point would be that it's more comfortable. You can get it with the Hemi,
True.
which
And
would make it awesome.
eventually the diesel again.
Yeah. My other point is going to be if you have a $50,000 budget and you're looking for a good off-roading SUV that's comfortable and decently sized,
Jeep
get a
Wrangler.
Yeah, seriously, the new Wrangler is an excellent choice as well as, and frankly, I keep saying frankly too.
It's okay.
It's something that I would consider, and it's not just because I'm a Jeep fanboy. No. It's because the new interior is fantastic. It's a great interior. It's relatively comfortable. It actually has, in my mind, a better ride on road and off road than the Gladiator we were just talking about. By the way, we have a comparison video on TFL Car with the Gladiator versus the Wrangler, and that's in Moab, and I highly recommend watching that video. Roman and I have a really good time, but we also really get a chance to test those things out. Now, going back to the 4Runner, I still think the 4Runner is top on that list as well. And there's one more thing about the 4Runner to keep in mind. Even if you keep it for 10, 15 years, the resale value on that is going to blow you away because it's going to be better than anything else it competes against, except for maybe
the Wrangler.
Yeah, although by then the Wrangler will have another new version with electric whatever prods and blah, 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 blah. So, that's another thing to keep in mind. Should we move on?
We got one more question we want to get through here. So Alex sends in our last question. The best commuter hatchback for under $6,000. So Alex lives in California, and their dad is looking for a commuter car for under $6,000. He's mainly looking for a hatchback with under 150,000 miles. It needs to be somewhat reliable, have a decent interior, get good gas mileage, and have enough room to recline. So maybe you could take like a nap in it or something like that.
Well, just more room for the driver.
Sure. He doesn't want a Scion, Pontiac, or Saturn. He was looking at a Nissan Leaf, a Fiat 500, the Honda Civic, or the Mini Cooper. But what cars do we recommend?
Now, it's kind of interesting. Our producer had a couple suggestions here, and I didn't completely agree with him on all of them, so we all kind of have our own. So I'll tell you what. We'll just say that you'd probably recommend the Volkswagen Rabbit because you're a Volkswagen boy.
Yeah, the Mark V well, now we call it the Golf. Back then they called it the Rabbit because they were trying to be retro.
Well, they called the base one the Rabbit.
And it has a little rabbit badge somewhere on it. Anyways, this one you could get it with a 2.5 liter 5-cylinder engine, which is kind of an interesting engine. The Mark V platform is just a really solid little platform. I think this is kind of like the renaissance of the Golf in the modern era. I think the 2, 3, the 3 and 4 were not so good, and then the 5 was good again. It's just a solid. You get German build quality, which could be a good thing or could be a bad thing depending on your perspective. It's just a solid. It's a solid little hatchback, very spacious, good to drive, all the good stuff.
Now, Zach, back there behind the camera, says the Mazda 3. Now, by the way, I own a Mazda 3, and I've had a few Mazdas, and they're great cars. However, I don't find them to be that spacious. This is coming from
and the interior's not that great.
Yeah,
they're okay. I think they're okay. Yeah, they get you by. They're okay. However, Mitchell Long, I totally agree with you, bro. Honda Fit. I really think that in terms of for a small car, the interior of the Honda Fit is most utilitarian, and it has a surprising amount of space. Part of the reason why, by the way, is because they took the gas tank out from the back and put it underneath the driver's seat, so the driver's the first one to die. Just kidding.
Awesome.
But no, it's safe. The car actually doesn't explode. But the good news is because of that, you have tons of backseat space, but you also have some pretty good front seat space. Junior and I are able to actually drive the car without rubbing shoulders that much, and it is a small car.
With 5 enormous tires.
We had 5 enormous tires in the back.
So while we're on the subject of Honda, people are mentioning the Civic.
Yeah.
Something that's important to note here in this kind of budget range and the year range we're looking at.
Yeah.
Honda didn't sell the Civic in a hatchback.
As a hatchback,
they sold the Civic Si, the 3-door one.
Yeah.
Right. Which was really cool, by the way.
And then they didn't bring the hatchback back until the current generation of Civic. So there's a gap in there where it was just the sedan and just the coupe.
Right. Keep the budget in mind. He's trying to keep it under $6,000.
Yeah.
Now, the Honda Fit, you have to get one with a lot of miles on it in order to get to that budget, and either the first or second generation, or perhaps a salvage one, which I never recommend salvaged cars.
No. But it's a Honda, right? So presumably even 100,000 miles isn't actually that much. That's not that bad for a Honda. Oh, look at this. Ding. Dan Atkinson, Dan the trucker, not Trucker Dan. 16 Escape S that's uncomfortable for driving longer than around town, or 15 Malibu. Oh, I see. Which car should he buy?
Oh.
16 Escape S that's uncomfortable for driving longer than around town, or a 15 Malibu LS that is a bit unknown.
Of those two,
I'd probably go for the Escape.
Yeah. The Malibu LS, I don't think, is that the one with the turbo? I don't think that had the turbo. I think it was the higher one, like
the RS.
Want to say it was just the 2.5. I don't know off the top of my head. Actually,
it's really off the top of my head. It's hard to think. But I think we're leaning towards Escape.
Yeah, I think we lean Escape,
especially the EcoBoost.
Yes.
If you get the EcoBoost Escape, at least you have really good power, and it did have stupid power.
I think the S has the 1.5 EcoBoost.
Still not a bad engine.
Is that the? Oh, it is. Yes. Yeah, I think it's the. Is it ES that had the?
SE.
SE.
The 2-liter, yeah.
The acronyms and the terms.
Still, the 1.5 is not bad.
Yeah.
Okay, but as for the best hatchback, I think the Fit's a really good choice. I think you'd be fine with the Golf. The Mini Cooper, if you got the one with the CVT, it will blow up on you. So I think Mini's probably best to stay away from.
Look, I love Minis, and they're fun cars, but they're not the most reliable, especially with the CVT.
Yeah.
And you wanted room.
Not small.
Not a lot of space in there. I mean, really, no.
One interesting one here, though, is the Nissan Leaf. And that brings up an interesting point about used Nissan Leafs, which is that
super cheap.
They're so inexpensive.
Yeah, but there's a reason for that.
Which is?
They have
limited mileage.
range.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, you're losing up to 30% of your range usually.
But depending on your daily commute, that could be not as much of a problem.
Yeah, we don't know what his commute is. I mean, he may only have to drive 10 miles a day or something. We don't know that.
Right.
Yeah, I actually looked at it for my one of my kids, and it's still a possibility. The bottom line is that something like the Nissan Leaf, if you're going to get something like that, there's so many other cars you can get in that price range still that are, well, frankly, not electric. Thus, you have better range.
Right. But yeah, I think.
Okay, Alex was saying get an Impreza.
Oh,
Again, in that year range, they only made it in the sedan. They didn't bring the hatchback until. Or no, wait, they did.
The Impreza
they did.
Never mind.
Yeah, but I wouldn't. I don't recommend the Impreza for two reasons. First of all, I think the interior is crap.
Oh, awful.
Second, it really is.
Tin can.
It's not a very good interior, and it's not as utilitarian as the Honda. The only thing it has that's really good is all-wheel drive. Exactly. So sorry, Alex, I have to disagree with you there, and it's not because we're having conflicts with Subaru. I've owned Subarus before. We all have. But the bottom line here is if you're buying that vehicle, prepare for not such a great interior, fit and finish either.
Right.
And something that, for the price, there's better cars out there.
I keep forgetting about the Impreza wagon. From those days. That's why I made that mistake.
Well, there you go, guys. Are we good?
I think so.
I think we're good for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thanks, Dan, for the donation. And remember, guys, any comments you post on this video, if you're not watching it live, we do read those. We do try and respond to them. If you have your own questions about what cars or trucks you should be buying, send us an email. You can send it to ask@tflcar.com or info@tfl. Wait, did I get that backwards? Is it ask at TFL Truck?
Yes.
Yeah, ask at TFLtruck.com or info@tflcar.com.
There you go.
Send us some emails with your questions about what you should buy. We love to answer you guys' questions. And should I play us out?
Play us out.
Alrighty.
Have a great week, guys.
I can go back to my impression.
You need to wear the hat for that. Just got to be wearing the hat.